Joining the 2-for-1 Drafts podcast is NFL's Daniel Jeremiah. DJ, everyone calls you DJ, though. Can we call you DJ?
Yeah, absolutely, man.
Right, there we go.
The only one that has a different, like my grandmother used to call me Danny, which I was never really fond of. But DJ and Daniel, I'm good either way.
I'm calling you Danny the rest of the podcast now. I got to join your grandma in forces here.
Anytime I do something you don't agree with now, you're like, yeah, nice ranking there.
Great
Danny.
take,
nice mock
Danny.
draft, Danny.
I still feel like I refer to you, though, in my head as like move the sticks, because way back in the day, my brother, I remember my brother, I was in college. I was like sophomore in college. My brother showed me your Twitter account, and he's like, there's this former scout on Twitter talking about, Aaron Rodgers or whatever. And he's like, you should check him out, move the sticks. And so that one's always stuck with me. And I kind of, the first question I wanted to ask was, what was going through, what was your plan when you first started on Twitter? I think it was back in like 08, 09, I think, when you first started. What did you think was going to happen with that whole foray into the public sphere?
Well, it was crazy because I had, I'll kind of give you some backstory here. So I had worked for ESPN for 2 years right out of college on the production side. So I was on the Sunday Night Football crew, and I was a spotter up in the booth, and I helped. I was an E&G producer, meaning I just went around with a couple camera guys, and we shot scenics the days before the game. So it's kind of a way to kind of get into that world. And my connection to that world was Chris Mortensen, who's been a family friend for a long time. So going through that period, and then I end up running into my brother's college roommate. My brother played at Liberty University, and his college roommate was a scout with the Ravens. So then I go into scouting. He encouraged me to go into scouting, so I take a job at going to scouting with the Ravens. Then I'm with, for 4 years, I go to the Browns, take a promotion there. And then after 2 years, they let the whole group go. So I had 18 months left on my contract, and I had a choice of, I had some job offers inside the league, or I could try and, sit out for a year and explore the media thing. So I thought, I'll give this media thing a shot. I've always wanted to do that. And Chris Mortensen encouraged me to get a Twitter page. I knew nothing about it. It's like brand new. Yeah. So I have no expect. I don't even know what this is. I don't know what it is. I'm like, well, I got to get a name. And I think my name was taken or something. Like I couldn't, Daniel Jeremiah was there. So I'm like, well, I got to think. I kind of explored on the app, and I'm like, okay, so I got to think of something catchy or creative that people will recognize. So I came up with Move the Sticks, which is basically from my old boss, Phil Savage. He used to always, when we'd have scouting meetings, he would always tell us, the key, as you guys can appreciate, when you're trying to wrap your arms around so many players over the course of a year, he said the key is just, continue to advance the ball every day. Don't worry about touchdowns. Just worry about first downs. Just a little bit every day, and eventually you get there. So I used that and kind of shortened that down to Move the Stick. So I create this thing. Nobody's going to follow me. Nobody knows who I am. So, Mort had told me, just tweet out some scouting stuff. There'll be some people that like fantasy football that maybe we'll get in on that. So I don't think anything. I go on vacation. I'm with my family on a cruise ship in Alaska, and I go to the internet cafe to check my email for the first time in 3 days, and I had 1,500 messages saying new follower. I was like, whoa, what is going on? I didn't know this happened. And I finally see an email from Mort that says, hey, I just encourage people to follow you on Twitter. How about you tweet something?
Oh, man.
Okay. And that's how it grew. That's how it started, and it just kind of grew from there.
That was probably my brother and I. We're probably one of those people, because he was like, you got to follow this guy. And he was showing me his old tweets that he would ask you questions at back in 2010 about the Packers, because we were diehard Packers fan. But he said, he told me this today that I didn't actually remember, but he said he used to refer to people on Twitter as your tribe, as the tribe. And I don't. Yes. And when did that start? Where did that come from?
I didn't know this.
Why'd you stop doing it? Yeah, I know.
So this is a true story. So I'm out of the scouting thing at this time, and I'm trying to build a following. And so I do some homework, and I'm like, okay, how do you grow a following? I don't even know how to get people to, it's like you're collecting this group. So there's a book called Tribes by Seth Godin, and I read it, and I thought, man, this guy's really onto something, how it's creating kind of a community instead of just one-way communication. If you can have topics of conversation and use your tweets almost like a message board, here's a tweet, and it's a discussion point. And so then not only are you communicating with the people that are following you, what inevitably happens is they start communicating with each other. underneath your tweets. And it's like Twitter 101, right? We see it every day when you tweet something out and people fight it out in the mentions. So it's kind of that's why I came up with that, tribe. He talked about kind of building your tribe. So I did that for quite some time, and then it became pretty mainstream where everybody was calling that kind of weird about it. I'm like, no, it's like I'm like a president of some tribe. I'm like, no, I don't think that. So I'll
chief.
go ahead.
Yeah.
I'll go back off. Yeah, I was a chief. Yeah, hell, I should use the right reference there. I didn't view myself in that light, so I was like, I'll back off.
That is fantastic. I'd like to say Mike and his brother were original members of the tribe. It sounds like it, at least. I maybe was a little bit younger, but that's awesome. I'd love to kind of pivot this next question to talk about your evaluation process. I'm sure it's developed a lot since you were a scout with the Ravens, Browns, etc. But now that you are in the role that you are now, what is your process going through these players, maybe specific scouting reports and things like that? I'd love to hear like how you actually evaluate these players, what steps you go through.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. It's something that hopefully gets better with the process and evolves and grows every year. And truthfully, and I've told you guys this on the side, but being able to incorporate the PFF Ultimate with NFL Vision, which is the program I use to watch all the tape, to be able to sort different things, more than I ever have in the past. I've had some basic capabilities in that regard, but this year it's made it really cool to be able to do some different projects. But the way I kind of I've got to it, because the first couple of years in media, you finish the season because we're still covering the NFL during the season, and then I would transition into the draft. And I wasn't on the main desk during those first couple of years, so I was off on a side desk, and so I was going to be able to chime in on players here or there, but wasn't going to be responsible for the whole draft class. So I would, my goal at that time was, 150 to 200 players, and I was doing it exactly like I would do it at Scout, which was, try and get 4 games in on those guys and study those guys, have all my notes in my notebook, and then I would translate those into an Excel sheet. And so I would just have the name, the height, weight, speed, and then my grade, and I would use kind of abbreviated sentences and just kind of get some nuggets on each player. So when he was picked, if I was called upon, I could kind of give my little thumbnail scouting report inside that Excel sheet. Had to write up the top 50, which I still do now, which those reports get published on NFL.com, but the rest of it is all on this Excel sheet. Well, then, you start moving up to the main desk and you start being, hey, this draft's going a lot deeper. I want to be able to comment on our players. So I go from, watching 150 to maybe 200 players to doubling that to where I'm over 400 players.
Oh, wow.
Getting ready. So I'm like, there's just not enough time for me to go through and do 4 games on 400 players. Like it's not going to happen. So what I've done is I'll get through like the first 2 games. And if I deem that player at that point in time to not be, for lack of a better phrase, would be like if he's, 6th round would probably be that cutoff, 5th, 6th round. If he's not better than a 5th or 6th round player, I'm putting him to bed. I've got 2 tapes on him. Now, if he blows up the combine, I'll come back and revisit him, and I'll do more work on him.
Interesting.
But those late guys, I'm giving them two cracks at it, and then I almost kind of look at it like they've got to earn their 3rd tape. And then once we get into the better players, now we can go anywhere from, the quarterbacks, I'm going to try and get through all their games for the top guys. And, at least I'm getting through 8 or 9 games. And then, the other guys that are in your top, 150 players, 200 players, you're getting at least that, 3 to 4 games in on those guys. So trying to spend more time on the guys we're going to really talk about, because in the draft, once we get to day 3, in the later portion of day 3, we're interviewing coaches. We're talking big picture. We're going to go lots of picks where I won't necessarily get to chime in on each and every one. So it just made more sense to pour more of my time into those top 150 to 200 players, while also being able to speak about those guys that are picked there later in the draft.
Plus, like the guys later in the draft, like sometimes there's not positives, to say about these guys. You gotta. And you try to have to probably skew positive on NFL, media. You can't necessarily just bash a guy in the 7th round. So that probably makes sense.
Bashing late day 3 picks, Mike, it's not something Daniel's into right now. But I would love to even know more too. I was listening to the Move the Six podcast, and I know you and Bucky both factor in a ton of background information. You do have a good amount of access, I'd like to say, with NFL media, being able to talk to coaches, other scouts and players and things like that to really heavily infuse background information and character type of stuff into your reports. How does that process? Because you watch the games, you earn that third tape, you become this 4-tape type of player on your board, and then how do you go back and kind of comb through and factor in some of this background and character stuff?
Yeah, it's difficult because you're still, even though you have relationships, you can get a lot of information. You can't get the same type of information you could if you're inside a building with those teams. But I'll give you an example. As a quarterback that I was doing work on before the combine, so I get my four games done before the combine on him. I talked to a coach that was on his staff where he played. He gives me a lot of good information. I talked to 2 coaches that are in his conference that coached against him. So, give me the challenges of coaching against this guy. What'd you think? How did he deal with different looks you gave him, different things like that. So you get that perspective. And then you go through, before they work out, I've talked to 3 or 4 teams that have visited with him in the interview process as you go into the combine. So that, to me, I feel like I've got a pretty holistic view of this kid from inside the program, outside, within the conference, and then what he's, the impression he's left with teams. So the personal choice that I make is that I'm never gonna air dirty laundry on these kids. Mm-hmm. It's just not what I don't feel right about it. I'm not gonna do it. So sometimes I'll have guys that might move on my list, and people will go like, "What happened?" Well, I'm not going to tell you that his interviews are terrible. He struggled to learn. There's a couple incidents at the school that haven't been reported that concern me. Like those types of things happen, and there'll be movement on my list. But I'm never going to air that kid out like that in my role. I know other people that post that stuff, and I'm not saying it's right or wrong. Just for me personally, I just didn't feel right about doing that. So it can impact my ratings, but I'm never going to throw that stuff out there.
Gotcha.
All right, speaking of movement on your big board, we're looking through your top 50 today, which I recommend anyone go check out. A lot of interesting nuggets here, but the first big sort of difference from your board to ours here at PFF comes at number 14, Justin Jefferson, the LSU wide receiver. And one of the biggest reasons we're low on him is because a lot of his slot production was sort of, we believe, was kind of schemed in that LSU offense. And he hasn't faced a ton of press coverage. And I know Mike Mayock came out and said that, one of the most important things for a college wide receiver translating to the NFL is how they deal with press coverage. And so what are your thoughts, I guess, on kind of the twofold thing about Justin Jefferson as a prospect, why you're so high on him, number 14 overall, and how important is, facing press coverage when translating to the league?
Sure. One thing I would say about that's interesting is, Jerry Jeudy's got a ton of production inside there in the slot too. So you hear some of those, obviously Jerry, we've seen him with his releases, how explosive and how dynamic he is. So, you're not as concerned about that. With guys like this, it helps when you have, you kind of have guys that they remind you of in pass and how they've moved and their movement skills. And to me, Keenan Allen and him have similar movement skills, what they can do at the top of the route. And I look at guys that haven't faced a ton of press coverage, and you've got to beat it with your feet or your hands, right? You got to be able to be quick enough to beat them with your feet. You got to be strong enough to beat them with your hands. Now, you got to at least be one or the other. I think this kid can do both. I think he's got play strength, and I think he does have enough foot quickness that he'll be able to get out there and get free off the line. So that doesn't really worry me. I think he's a real loose athlete. I just think this kid has an unbelievable feel for getting up on the toes of corners, and then he can separate at the top of his route, which to me is kind of the way the game's played. So I would keep him in the slot. That's where I would put him. I watch, during those Charger games, seeing Keenan Allen each and every week and the damage he does in there. I think this kid's going to do a lot of the same things.
Yeah, and I think a quote that comes to mind is something that I read from Matt LaFleur saying with his slot receivers, they need to be smart. They need to understand how to run choice routes and find holes and zones. And with Justin Jefferson, he's up there with the best in the class with doing that. And maybe he doesn't have the movement skills of CeeDee Lamb and Jerry Jeudy, but what he does bring to the table is that wit, is that stuff between the ears in addition to the loose hips like you kind of referenced. I think Justin Jefferson does bring a lot of that to the table. Another thing I want to mention and bring up to you, looking at your board, you have Georgia's DeAndre Swift at number 16, Clyde Edwards-Helaire of LSU at 30. Where are you right now with drafting running backs in the first round and even better, evaluating running backs as these first-round caliber players? Because here at PFF, position of value is so important for us, and we kind of see more and more that the running back position becoming more replaceable, more of a day two type of position. Where are you right now with kind of valuing running backs as first-round talents?
Yeah, I think it's a fascinating discussion, and I'm always going to say, look, I get in terms of the importance of the position. If there is a player with a similar grade, I'm going to take, every day of the week. If you have a need at a tackle, offensive tackle, edge rusher, corner, obviously quarterback, all those positions, if it's close, are going to be rated and going to be selected ahead of running backs. The way I look at it is, at some point in time, you're just a better football player, a much better football player than the other options that I have. And I'm not against taking a running back in the first round, provided you have some of those other pillars in place. If you've got your quarterback, you've got your edge rusher, you've got your tackle or your tackles offensively, and this player's there, it's a 4 or 5 year commitment for me. I'm not into re-signing these guys in terms of big money deals on second contract. That's where I am with a lot of folks on the running back thing. But I do think there is value if you have a team that's ready to win, to be able to insert that running back so he's not wasting carries on bad teams. But when you can drop him in and you can get elite production out of him for 4 or 5 years, I do think there's still value for them there as a first-round pick. My issue would be more so with whether or not you're going to pay these guys an exorbitant amount of money on their second contract.
Yeah, running backs also, they peak quickly. It's year 2, year 3, they are at their top. So we want to get into some more of the guys that you might be lower on here.
Yeah, we're gonna call this segment Danny's takes. Actually, the guys that you're lower on than maybe compared to what PFF has. I'm gonna bring up 3 names, and we'll kind of take one each individually. Yep. But Julian Okwara, the edge defender of Notre Dame, he is high on our board right now, not inside your top 50. Also, Jalen Reagor on that list, and Jordan Elliott of Missouri. Let's start with Okwara, though. I think specifically, I know Mikey wanted to bring this up. Julian Okwara, the edge defender of Notre Dame, is an athletic freak. A Bruce Feldman's freaks list type of guy, but he's not getting the same hype as K'Lavon Chaisson, who's another guy that is going to have. I know he didn't test the combine, but going to have similar athletic ability. Compare those 2 players for me, Okwara and Chaisson, and maybe why Okwara is a tier below Chaisson.
Sure. To me, Okwara, and I like a lot of things about him. Stand him up on the edge. He's got big punches. He flashes a little bit of power. But I thought overall play strength was not good. He gets tossed and thrown around at the point of attack too often for me. I worried about that a little bit. And he plays really upright and high. So to me, I didn't see, when you compare him with Chaisson, Chaisson's got more snap, more power, and more twitch in his hands. I think both guys can get off the ball. I think Chaisson plays with better leverage. So that to me was a little bit of the difference there between those two. I just think you get a little bit more. You get a more explosive, more physical player with Chaisson. I see the production. I get all that with Okwara. But I was just, when I finished watching him, and maybe some of it was some of the hype I had heard about him, I just wanted to see a little bit more power, a little more strength, and not seeing him get ragdolled and thrown around quite as much.
You're breaking Mike's heart right now. A former Golden Domer, a Notre Dame alum. You should have seen Mike with Brady Quinn at the Combine, by the way. It was honestly absurd. These two just chopping it up. Talking about intramural basketball at a certain point. It was absurd.
I will say, Okwara, though, the inconsistency is worrisome because he does play high, and you'll see the flashes. He is bull rush like Mekhi Becton. You bull rush Isaiah Wilson. Those guys are 100 pounds heavier than him. So you see the flashes, but why it doesn't happen every play is kind of the scary part with Okwara, I will say.
Let's jump to Jalen Reagor. Where are you with him right now?
Yeah, Reagor. So Rager's an interesting one. He was just kind of on the verge of my top 50. I thought for sure he was going to run in the 4.3s. I was kind of shocked. Yeah. It's crazy, right? I think he ran 4.47 or something like that.
Yeah. We think he put on bad weight. We thought he was a 4.3s guy.
He got out. He couldn't maintain it. Yeah, and I had talked to the folks. Who'd been training him, and said that when he came in there, he was already running, low 4.4, high 4.3, early on in the training process, which normally those guys get faster. So I was shocked he ran 4.47. I do agree. I thought he was carrying a little bit extra weight. I thought his start was good. He just didn't maintain it. Mm-hmm. To me, the drops, and you guys will have the drop percentage in front of you, I'm sure. The drop percentage was pretty high with him. That was a little bit of a concern there. He's somebody that can beat press with quicks. I like the fact you can use him on the fly sweep stuff, double moves. He's elusive after the catch. He wins over the top. But to me, the only issue I had was just I wanted to be a little bit more consistent with his hands. So when I get somebody that's not 6 feet tall that has some drops, That puts him right outside my 50. He's the third receiver that's outside my 50, if that makes any sense. So I have Hamler, and Hamler and Michael Pittman are the two that are just ahead of him outside my 50. Then he's right there.
Michael Pittman, talk about a guy who has the opposite of that problem. He's got some hands on him. I think he only has 3 drops in his entire career at USC. That guy's got some stupid hands.
Rager, 16 drops on 163 catchable, which is like around 10%, which is borderline. That's it.
All right.
So what does that put his drop percentage at? I'm just curious.
Just under 10%, so it's like 9.8 or something.
Yeah,
like
and we always say when you get above that 9.5 into the 10% range is when it does become a concern, something that you'll see kind of translate to the NFL. Last guy on the Danny's takes here is Jordan Elliott. We see this guy as a first-round player. The Missouri defensive tackle, he earned very high grades for us this past year, was the highest grade defensive tackle in college football. I know Bucky has had him in his top 5 defensive tackles, not in your top 50. Where are you with Jordan Elliott?
He's my top defensive tackle outside of my 50. Nice. So he'll be, when my list comes out, he'll be between 50 and 60. Look, the stuff I like about him, you'll see some long arm. You'll see some of that power with that. He's really good on games. He's got a nice swim move. I like him, being able to stack single blocks. He's fine there. To me, against doubles, he got destroyed. Yeah. And the biggest thing for me was just effort. I just wanted to see a little more consistent effort. And that's what me and Bucky disagree on that. I think he feels he plays really hard. I did not see all out, balls to the wall effort. So that's one of the reasons that kept him out of my top 50. That being said, I have a good grade on him. He's a second round player to me.
Mm-hmm. All right. Final question here. Guys in this class, 1 or 2 names that maybe aren't getting top 5, top 10 love, but you would stand on a table and say, we need this guy in our locker room. He's the real deal.
Ooh, that's a good one. To me, give me like the ultra tough competitive guys, and so like Brandon Ayuk from Arizona State fits that mold for me. Okay. Like what he does with the ball in his hands, just refusing to be tackled. He's just so competitive. He's so tough. He has return value, which has always been a great sign for these wideouts. When you've got some history there, it kind of foretells what you can do after the catch. So he'd be one that I'm a big fan of, that I'm really high on. Trying to think of other guys kind of outside that top range that would be interesting. I'm a Ross Blacklock guy.
Oh yeah,
look, I know the Achilles. Yeah, I know he has the Achilles, but from 18. But man, he's twitched up. It was funny. I think right? I told that story.
Or no?
Yeah, I have not returned to Ross Blacklock form, so I'm still waiting on that. It's only been like 5 years. I'm hoping about 5 years from now I'll be feeling better. But he was a funny one because I just hadn't heard a lot of buzz about him. And so when I watched him, I just had no expectations, and I was like, you're kind of going through this list of D tackles, and this guy just jumped off the screen. I was like, whoa, this dude's dynamic. Like he's got some serious twitch and power, and he just jolts dudes.
TCU finds those guys, though. TCU finds those guys. Ben Banigou, Blacklock, Jeff Gladney's a pretty good athlete. Rager. They find some athletes at TCU.
And they're tough. Like, that's the Gary Patterson program. Like, all those kids are tough. Gladney, he's another one that I really, really like, man. But the thing on Blacklock, so I tweet out a couple videos, and then I said I'd like to nominate myself to run for president of the Ross Blacklock fan club. And within I don't know, 5 minutes, I get a text from an NFL head coach with my tweet attached, and he wrote underneath that, "You're too late."
Oh, no.
So I thought that was pretty funny. Like he's got a sponsor out there. So if he gets picked by that team, I'll out him and I'll say who it was that he sent me that. Mm-hmm. But no, he's a really good player. And like we talk about him on Twitter all the time. But the little corner from La Tech is just so fun to watch. He's got such good ball skills, and he's just so tough. And I think it's like one of the first plays of the Texas game. He just jumps Colin Johnson, and he looks like David versus Goliath. Man. He jumps him at the line of scrimmage, and I was like, "Whoa! Like this dude he's got a little edge to him." So,
and he's graded really, really well for us.
4.5.
Yeah. Robertson graded really, really well for us.
He's probably going to run in the 4.5s. I hope he doesn't run the 4.6s. But the production, I can see how you guys would love the production. Get 14 career picks or something like that.
Ton of forced incompletions.
He pulls the trigger. Like I was in Baltimore when we had a guy, Jim Leonard, who was, he's the at Wisconsin. I think it's the DC at Wisconsin now. but he was that same type of just undersized bulldog, like just you just want one of those guys on your team. So, yeah, he's one I'm a fan of.
Jim Leonard won the Wisconsin dunk contest back in the day.
Really?
He could fly. Yeah.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that. Fantastic stuff, DJ. We
What
really
was that?
Jim Leonard.
I didn't hear that one. You gotta tell me that again.
Oh, Jim Leonard won the Wisconsin dunk contest
Back
apparently.
in the day. Yeah. 5'8".
Oh,
I didn't know that. Yeah. Wow, incredible. Well, really appreciate you coming on,
that's a
DJ.
great nugget.
This has been fantastic. Really appreciate you coming on 2-for-1 Drafts. We're going to have to get you on either closer to the draft or soon after because we need more of these takes. Really appreciate it.
No, you guys do a great job, man. It's such a cool service that you guys provide, and it's been really, really helpful for me. And look forward to keeping up this relationship and talking to you guys down the road.
Absolutely. Appreciate the kind words.
You want to get rid of me and get back to more great PFF YouTube content? All you have to do is push that button right there and subscribe. Thanks for watching.